Hello everyone, I'm Kodesha. So in this video we're going to go through lesson 1.9, complex input screens. Okay. So here it says to start with, create an Xcode project using iOS app template and name it Hotel Codable. So I got Xcode here, create new project, iOS app, next, then project name is Hotel Codable. Make sure that is storyboard and then click next. I'm going to put this on the desktop so that I can access it easily. Okay, so it's done. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the model objects. So let's do File, New File. So this will be a Swift file. You can actually use two different files, but I'm just going to put it all in one file. So next, I'll call it Hotel Codable Models. And I'll create. So there's going to be two structures, registration and room type. Okay, this is fairly self-explanatory. You got the name of the guest staying at the hotel, the last name of the guest, the email address, when he's going to check in, when he's going to check out, the number of adults and the number of children. For the Wi-Fi, that is, do you want a room with Wi-Fi? And for room type, this is another structure which I have not created yet, which I will do now. Okay, so for room type, oh, sorry, missed that. So for room type, I need to know the name of the room, the short name of the room, and the price for the room. I also have another property called ID, which is integer, which you'll see it being used later. And then you have a static function. So if you wanted to say that one room is the same as another room, you will compare the IDs. So I'm going to change the simulator to use my favorite simulator, iPhone SE. And then I am going to work on the input screen. So for that, you go to main.storyboard. I'm going to use a table view controller. So in the app storyboard, add the navigation controller with the table view controller as the root view controller. Okay. So I don't need you anymore. Goodbye. Don't need you anymore. Goodbye. So let's look for a navigation controller. So a navigation controller conveniently brings along a table view controller. Now I need this to be the initial view controller. So in the attributes inspector, I'm going to set it as the initial view controller. Now the navigation item title should be set to new guest registration. And in the attributes inspector, the table view should be set to static cells. So we go to the attributes inspector, set the content to static cells, and set the style to grouped. Okay. Okay, first thing, gonna collect 3 pieces of string data: first name, last name, and email address. So for this, I'm going to use text fields. So add a text field to each of the 3 cells, one for each string that you're collecting: first name, last name, and email. So we go to the library, search for text field. Okay. Pin all 4 edges of the text field and set the placeholder text in the attributes inspector. So using the add new constraints button, everything is going to be pinned. Okay. Then set the placeholder text in the attributes inspector. So this would be email. This would be last name. Oh, not that one. Placeholder. This will be first name. Okay, I'll need a class file to add my code to, because I've already deleted the view controller file. So new Cocoa Touch class. This will be an subclass of UI table view controller, and we'll call it add registration table view controller. Okay, add it to the project. Since this is a static table view, I can probably remove all of this and just leave view did load. Make sure the identity of the table view controller is set. So in the identity inspector, I will change this to add registration table view controller. Okay, we need to add outlets. So my preferred way of adding outlets is to add them manually and then linking them in the connections inspector. Right, so we will go now to the storyboard. So in the connections inspector, I should have the outlets. So I'm going to connect the outlets now. First name and last name. So next I'm going to need a bar button item. I'll put that here. Then I'm going to set it to done. Okay, so I'm going to need an IB action for that. So let's get an assistant. Control and drag from the done button. So that should be done bar button tapped. And this should be a UI bar button item. Okay, so that's the action. Get the values from the text fields. Incidentally, I think I can just do that like this. Now I've got more room to type. So that's either going to get anything that you put in the first name text field is going to get an empty string. Same for last name. and same for email. Now we're just going to put in some print statements to show you that the button has been tapped, and these are the values that we get back. Okay, so all the outlets have been hooked up, the actions have been hooked up. Let's see if this works. Okay, new guest registration, first name Coder, last name Shah, email, and you click done. Yep, everything's working great. Next, you're going to collect dates. Okay, so we need a couple of date pickers. So going back to the storyboard now. So my table view currently has one section. I'll add another section. And in the second section, I am going to have 4 rows. Now, what happens is that they're already going to be populated with the text fields. So I'm just going to remove all the text fields. Okay, so we've got 4 empty cells. So this cell should show the label and the date. This will show the date picker. This should show the checkout and the date, and this should show the date picker. Right, so I'm just going to configure the label cells first. So for this cell, in the attributes inspector, the style should be right detail. And for this one, it should also be set to right detail. Then I am going to update the labels. So this should be check in date. Change the font size to 17. For this, you don't really have to worry what it says because you're going to change it later. And I can just change it to date. So this would be the checkout date. Right. So in this section, the second and the fourth cells will be the date pickers. And the preferred style should be wheels, and the date and time. Okay, change the mode to date. Then I'm going to use constraints to make them fill the cell. So you click the add new constraints button, you add constraints, add 4 constraints, and there is the first date picker. Put this in, change the preferred style to wheels, change date and time to date, and with the date picker still selected, add all 4 constraints. Now you'll notice the size of the table view cell will automatically grow to accommodate the size of the date picker. Right, that's done. Now I'm going to need outlets. Okay. So 2 outlets for the labels and 2 outlets for the pickers. Then I need a method to update them. So I will put that here. So for the update date views method, check in date label. So that is for the check-in date label. I'm just going to copy and paste this and just change it to check out. So checkout date label.text equals checkout date picker.date formatted date abbreviated time omitted. Right, so this will populate the 2 labels, and it is the same method that will be executed whenever each of the date pickers is changed. Now obviously you can't book a room at the hotel before the current date. So I am going to define midnight today. Then check-in date picker's minimum date will be set. And the current value for the check-in date picker is the same as the minimum date. Now at the top of update date views, check out date picker's date. Okay, the date is going to display. The minimum date that you can set it would be calendar current date by adding day value 1 to check-in date picker dot date. So it's always going to be 1 day later. Now in the IB action, func date picker value changed. I'm just going to call this method. And when the app is first started, I'm also going to call this method. So in view did load, okay, we'll also update the date views. Then I'm going to change the code in the done bar button tapped method, because now we have the check-in and check-out date. And gonna print that out as well. Okay. Now I still haven't linked the outlets and the actions, so I'll do that next. You can see here in the connections inspector, check-in date label, that would be here. Check-in date picker would be this. Checkout date label would be here. And checkout date picker would be this. Then for date picker value changed, drag this to the first date picker and choose value changed. And repeat the process for the second date picker. Okay, all the connections have been made. Let's try and run this now. Okay, so you can see it accurately put here 12 June and accurately put here 13th of June. So if I click on done, so you can see I got the check-in and check-out dates. And if I were to change the dates, let's say for instance I change this to July, I click on done, you can see this is also changed to July. Alright, everything's working. And you will also see that this takes up a lot of space. So we are going to be adjusting the cell heights. So I'm going to add a few variables. So this is the cell that contains the check-in date picker. And this is the cell that contains the check-out date picker. I'm going to add a couple of booleans. So this is a handy way for me to set the isHidden property. So is checkout date picker visible? Initial value is false. Whenever the value is set, checkout date picker will be the opposite of the isHidden property will be the opposite of whatever is the value inside is checkout date picker visible. Alright, so now I've got variables to track the visibility of the date picker. I can implement the table view height for row add method. So the way this works is that if check-in date picker cell index path where is check-in date picker visible is false, the cell height will be set to 0 because the date picker will be hidden. And if checkout date picker cell index path where is checkout date picker is visible is set to false, again we return 0. All other table view cells will be set to automatic dimension. So that will handle the part where the cell size is set to 0 if is check-in date if the date pickers are not visible. Now we need to make them go back to the original size. So the way this works is the estimated size for both date pickers is 190 points. You don't really have to worry about what the actual size is going to be because it will automatically be set by the constraints. Now let's just see what happens when I build and run. Because the initial values are false, yes, both date pickers are now hidden. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is show or hide the date pickers. So if I press play, okay, so now they are hidden and I can click a row, but I can't make them appear. So I want to make it so that when I tap a cell, when I tap the check-in date cell, it's going to display the date picker. When I tap the checkout date cell, it's going to display the date picker for that. If a date picker is open, tapping the corresponding date picker would make the first date picker close. So the first step, it may be helpful to create properties for check-in date label cell index path and checkout date label cell index path. So I have that over here. So let's just put this here. Check-in date label cell index path. Index path. Row 0 section 1. So for checkout date label cell index path, that will be row 2. Okay, so if you look at the storyboard, okay, so this is section 1. Row 0 is the label, row 1 is the picker, row 2 is the label, row 3 is the picker. Right. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to use another one of the table view methods, which is a did select row at index path. Just let me type all this in first. Thank God for autocomplete. Did select row at index path. So when the row is selected, it highlights. I wanted to highlight briefly, so immediately after, I am going to deselect the row. Now we check the index path. So what this if statement means is that check-in label is selected, checkout picker is not visible, so we toggle check-in picker. So initially value was false, now the value is going to be true, so it's going to appear. So for this one, checkout label is selected, check-in picker is not visible, toggle checkout picker. So if either label is selected, previous conditions failed, meaning at least one picker is visible, toggle both. Yep. Let's do this to make it more clear. Then I will tell the table view to begin updates and end updates, which will make it redraw. Let's see if this works the way I want it to. So tap on this, it appears. Tap on this, it disappears. Tap on this, it appears. Tap on this, it disappears. Tap on this, the check-in date picker appears. Tap on checkout date, check-in disappears, checkout appears. So perfect. Everything works the way it's supposed to. Okay. Now I'm going to add another section. So you go to the main storyboard, table view, attributes inspector. So increase the number of sections to 3. So for the third section, there will be 2 table view cells. I'm just going to remove their contents. Okay. For some reason I wasn't able to delete that content anyway. Oh yes, probably because I set it to custom. Right, not a problem. So table view cell is custom, table view cell is custom. So you're going to add, I'm going to add a couple of steppers so that I can put in the number of adults and number of children. Right, let's make this a bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So I got a stepper, I got a label, put both of these in a stack view. Then I'm going to put in another label. This would be for adults. And put this in the stack view as well. Okay, let's add constraints. Okay, maybe just add a couple of spaces here so that it's not flush against the sides of the screen. Then we repeat the process for the second table view cell. I wonder if I can just duplicate this. Never mind, we'll just do it this way. So everybody can see the process again. Stepper. Label. So then we put both the label and the stepper into a stack view. Then we have another label. This label will say children. And put that into the stack view as well. Now add the constraints. Okay. One of the things I might want to do is I'm going to change the font sizes, because I remember changing the font sizes to 17. Oh, it is already 17, is it? Yes, it is. Okay. So I'm fine. And sometimes this happens. You'll see that it's slightly askew, not aligned properly. But if you check on the constraints, it's perfectly fine. So if I were to build and run, it should, in theory, appear perfectly fine on the screen. Now you can say there that the values are ambiguous, but it still looks okay to me, so I am leaving it. Just put a couple of spaces here so that it is a little inset. Great. Now you'll need outlets. So generally, outlets are all at the top. Now we'll just copy and paste and replace adults with children. Okay, number of adults label, number of adults stepper, number of the children label, number of children stepper. Okay, to update new views, add a method called update number of guests. So this is similar to the update date views. Both the labels will be updated when you call this method. So this will pull the value from number of adults stepper. So being lazy, I am copying and pasting. Just replace the word adults with children. Okay, that's done. So to respond to a change in the stepper value, I have an IB action. You can see it's very similar to what I did for the date pickers. And since I have that there, I might as well do that in viewDidLoad as well. Right. Let's link everything up in the storyboard. So that would be number of adults label, number of adult stepper, number of children label, number of children stepper. And for the stepper value change method, just drag that to both steppers and choose value changed. All right. Final step, modify the done bar button tapped method. And that will do. So now when I build and run, so if I click on done, it should say 0, 0. And if I increase the values, yep, works perfectly. All right. Moving on to collect binary input. So we go back to the storyboard and add yet another section. Okay, so now we have 4 sections. I go to the 4th section and I remove one of the table view cells. And since I already have a stack view with a stepper, I'm just going to take out the stepper and replace it with a switch. All right. So for this label, it should say RM10 per day. And for this one, it should say Wi-Fi. $17, yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, just about perfect. Let's go ahead and create an outlet. And we're going to create a action. So this will be implemented later. Then we update the done bar button, tapped method. Okay, let's link that up. Okay. So just the switch needs to be linked up. Yeah, because that's the only outlet. So that's done. Let's have a, let's check. Okay, I didn't get a crash. If I click done, yeah, true, because the switch is set to on. Okay, so far so good. Now the last thing to do is to add the room type. So for this, I'm going to have another view controller, which allows you to select the room that you want to stay in. Before I do that, I'll just check to see whether my room struct is there. Yep, so the room struct is there. And then I can add an array of room types as a type property on room type. So since this is a type property, So it's going to be 3 room types. Right. In the storyboard, add a new table view controller. So this will display the room choices. And I need a new Cocoa Touch class file for this new controller. And this will be called Select Room Type Table View Controller. Make sure that this scene has the identity set. Okay, so this is a dynamic table view. And it will have one table view cell. Style is set to right detail. And reuse identifier is set to room type cell. Now in select room type table view controller, going to implement the data source methods. So for sections, there's only one section. For rows, there'll be the same number of rows as there are rooms. And we will put the details of each room in every row. Then we get the cell configuration. Room type is already set to the room type element according to the index path row. So set the text property of the default content configuration. Okay, so now the content configuration has been set. We can return it to the cell, and finally we return the cell. Okay, we go back to interface builder, and just to test, we are going to drag the arrow which denotes the initial view controller over here to the newly added table view controller. And if everything works the way it should, I should see the details of each of the 3 rooms. Perfect. Okay, so how do you implement selection? So to implement selection, you're going to use table view did select row at index path, which is what we used earlier. So we go back to select room, table view controller. Going to have a property to store the room that was selected. Initially it's not going to be selected, so it's an optional. And I will implement table view did select row at index path. Not this one. Not this one. Nope. Nope. And nope. So just like before, immediately after being selected, we deselect it. I'll make it animate. So that will set the room type that was selected. I get the table view to reload the data. Now I need to indicate which is selected. So I'm going to use the checkmark accessory type in table view cell for row at index path. So just before you return the cell, okay. I'm going to build and run the app now, and if it works the way it's supposed to, whenever I tap on the cell, it's going to display the check mark, which it does. Right, now how do I get that back? Okay, how do I get that back to the add registration table view controller? So I'm going to add a protocol to the select room type table view controller class called select room type table view controller delegate. So there's a method in here. So I'll pass in a controller and I'll pass in the selected room type. Now in the select room type table view controller class, going to implement the delegate property. Now when your user selects a room type, you can call your new delegate method. So did select row, add a call to select room type table view controller did select. Okay. Next, you'll add select room type table view controller to the app's navigation hierarchy, displaying the view controller when the user taps the associated cell. So in the add registration table view controller scene, add a new section with one cell and set the cell style to write detail. So I will add one more section. Take out whatever is in there. And set the cell to write detail. Title label will display a description of the requested information. Don't forget to set the size to 17. And the detail label to display the guest choice. So I'll just put choice. Doesn't really matter because it's going to be programmatically changed anyway. And set the accessory to disclosure indicator. Now go back into the add registration table view controller. I need an outlet for the detail label. And I need a property to hold the selected room type. Add a function to update the room type labels. And we call this in view did load, so that initially the room type label will say not set. Just going to go to the storyboard and just check the labels. Check in date label, check in date picker, check out date label, check out date picker. Oopsie. Okay, I made a mistake here. It went there. Right, not something that I can't fix. All right. So I'll need to link the action and the outlet. Okay, that's done. So this was the one that I should have removed. And this table view cell is the one that I should have set to write detail. So the title label should be room type. So that should be 17 points. And this one will just be choice. $17 points. Right. So that's done. And I have to set the accessory to the disclosure indicator. Okay. So IB outlet var room type label UI label have done that. Room type I've already done that. Add function to update the room type labels, done that. Add a call to the update room type function, already done that. Okay. Now I'm just going to link up the outlet. Yeah, this is the only outlet I haven't connected yet. So that goes to choice. Next, you'll conform to the custom protocol of the select room type table view controller and implement the required method. So we go back to add registration view controller. And I will make it conform to select room type table view controller delegate. It's going to complain, so I can now implement the stub. So I'll throw this with all the other functions. Func select room type table view controller, select room type table view controller, did select room type. So I can now assign the room type to the room type that is in the select room type table view controller. After that, I can update the room type. Now you'll need to add a show segue from the room type cell to the select room type table view controller. So we go over to the storyboard. So this is my table view cell. Hold down the control key, drag to here and choose the control, drag to here, choose the show segue. So that's my show segue. And then I'm going to create an IB segue action. Oh, don't forget to make this the initial view controller again. So get the assistant out. This will be at registration table view controller. That's correct. So I'll put in an IB segue action. Right there would be good. And this is called select room type with no arguments. Now, going to implement select room type. To set the delegate property and the room type property of the select room type table view controller if a selection has already been made. So okay. So that will set the delegate property. And that will set the room type, so I can pass it to the select room type table view controller. Alright. So you've now set up your custom protocol. The user, when you run your app, the user taps a cell to make a selection, triggering did select row. The table view did select row add method calls the delegate method select room type table view controller did select using two things. The receiver stored in the delegate property, your add registration table view controller instance, and the index path to the selected room type, which we use as the parameter of the select room type table view controller did select method. In the add registration table view controller, the select room type table view controller did select method provides access to the room type parameter and updates the add registration table view controller property that's holding the selected room type. Oh, this should not be add registration. Let's check out the protocol. Yeah, that's right. So the only warnings are, yes, only the views. Alright, so no issue. And let's just update the done bar button type method. So it's either going to be not set or it's going to be the room type name. Okay. Alright, let's see if this works. Okay. Room type not set. Okay, it's not passing back successfully. Time to check what's going on. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking for the mistake that I made. Okay, that is okay. So we look at the protocol. Protocol, select room type table view controller delegate. Should be any object. Func, select room type table view controller delegate. Controller, select room type table view controller. Did select room type of type room type. And then class, select room type table view controller, UI table view controller. Weak var delegate, select room type table view controller delegate. Okay, so far so good. Now when the user selects a room type, you can call your new delegate method in did select row. Table view, did select row at index path, select room type is room type all index path row. Self.room type is room type. Delegate, select room type table view controller. Self did select room type. Table view reload data. Next, you'll add select room type table view controller to the app's navigation hierarchy, displaying the view controller when the user taps the associated cell in the add registration table view controller scene. So I added the new section with one cell. I've already done that. Set the set to right detail, already done that. Use the title label, it says room type. Then the detail label to display the room choice. Accessory disclosure indicator. Set the outlet for the detail label. Okay, I already got the outlet for the detail label and a property to hold the selected room type. Got it. Next, add a function to update the room type labels. Lab room type equals room type label dot text room type dot name else room type label dot text not set. Okay, got that. Add a call to the update room type function in udit load. Got that. Next, you conform to the custom protocol of select room type table view controller, implement the required method, select room type table view controller, did select. In the implementation, set the room type property of the add registration view controller and update the room type labels. Class add registration table view controller, UI table view controller, select room type table view controller delegate. Then we go to func select room type table view controller. Select room type table view controller, did select room type, self room type, update room type. That's right. Now you'll need to add a show segue from room type cell to, yeah, already done that. Create an IB segue action in add registration table view controller. Call select room type with no arguments. IB segue action func select room type. That will return select room type table view controller. Let select room type controller is select room type table view controller. Select room type controller delegate.self, select room type controller room type, equals room type, return select room type controller. So I'm very confused because everything seems to be in order. And it says unable to find method select room type. But it's right there. Okay. Let's try closing the project and reopening it. Go back to the main.storyboard. And get the assistant open. Let's try and do the IB segue action again. So object is and no arguments. Okay, copying the code from here. So let's select that view, select let room compatible controller, select room type table view controller. Select room type controller, no delegate is self. Select room type controller, room type is room type. Return select room type controller. Save that. Let's check the connections inspector to see if there's any connections missing. Okay. Still says unable to find method, now select room type. Oh, but it works now. Okay, penthouse suite, 1 king, 2 queens. All right, that is very weird. Okay, so let's just run it one more time. And just use everything. So the name, email, check-in date, let's say July, check-out date is August, 1 adult, no children, Wi-Fi, room type, oh let's go for the penthouse suite since it's all hypothetical anyway. Then when we click on done, first name coder, last name Shah, email shah@mac.com. This is the check-in date, that is the check-out date, July and August, number of adults 1, number of children 0, Wi-Fi true, room penthouse suite. So everything works the way it's supposed to. So now that I have a nice input screen, I'll need to use the entered data to generate a model object. So I am going to create a new registration object when the staff submits the guest information. So I can use Codable or convert this to JSON so that I can save it to a web server. JSON we'll be learning about in the next unit. So an early way to make a model object instance is to add a computed property to the table view controller of your form. So this property will create and return a model object from all the view outlets and view controller properties. Then I can use the computed property and an unwind segue to add a new model object to the storage system. First, we make sure we have the representation of the model object that is in Hotel Codable Models. Already have it. In your add registration table view controller file, add a computed property called registration that returns registration. So I'll just type this in first. Yeah, this makes sense. You don't pick a room. How can I reserve one for you? I think this is pretty much the same as what is in this print statement here. So just copy the whole thing. So let first name is that, let last name is that, let check date in date is that, let checkout date is that, let number of adults is that, let number of children is that, let has Wi-Fi is that, and I already have room type. So I can return a registration object. Because this is a struct, it has a member-wise initializer. First name, last name, email, check-in date, checkout date, number of adults, number of children, has Wi-Fi, room type. So that is my computed property done. So at this point, the Hotel Codable app, you'll be able to quickly generate your model object by referencing the registration property. Okay, so all the time I can check whether the registration exists. If it exists, it's already populated. So the input screen is nice, but think about how the hotel staff might use this app. You can imagine that this input screen represents a small part of the overall workflow. For example, after the staff registers a guest, they probably like to see and access the information entered. These registration objects might be displayed in the table view for quick reference. To incorporate your add registration table view controller into a full app workflow, you'll be adding a table view that displays the registrations entered and allows the staff to access the add registration table view controller input screen that you built. So back in the storyboard, add a table view controller embedded in the navigation controller. So back in my storyboard, so I want a navigation controller. Set the initial view controller to the new navigation controller. This table view will display all the registrations that the staff have submitted. Add a Cocoa Touch class called registration table view controller.swift. So can I do file, new file, or I can right click, new file, registration table view controller.swift. So make sure that my storyboard the identity of the new table view controller is set. So to display each registration, select the prototype cell and set its style to subtitle and its identifier to registration cell. Okay. So this is the table view cell. Prototype cell, set its style to subtitle. Identifier to registration cell. In your new registration table view controller scene, set the navigation item to registrations. And an add bar button item to the right slot of the navigation bar. So this will be add. To display the input screen, add the modal segue from the add bar button to the navigation controller of the add registration view controller. Hold down the control key, drag, and I'm going to select modal. In the registration table view controller, add a property that holds an array of registration objects. So that will be an empty array. Use the array of registration objects to implement the data source for the registration table view controller. So I don't need anything in view did load. Not now anyway. This one would return 1 because there's only one section. This one would return the number of registrations. And this one, you're going to take a registration. So nothing new here really. I mean, it's the same as every previous dynamic table view that you've done before. Okay. So I'm using a range to capture and format both check-in date and checkout date. Then I add an unwind segue method so that the add registration table view controller can return to the registration table view controller. And again, this is again something that you've done before. Okay. For the last step, you need to adjust the action sent by the Done bar button on the Add Registration Table View controller. So in the storyboard, select the Done button. And open the Connections Inspector. In Send Actions, click the small X to delete the action. Instead, hook the Unwind segue to the Done button by control dragging from the button to the exit icon of the view controller and choosing Unwind from Add Registration with Unwind segue. So that's connected. At this point, you don't need the Done bar button type method, so go ahead and delete it. Because this was just for testing. What if the user wants to cancel an entry? Drag a bar button item from the object library to the left bar button slot in the Add Registration Table View controller scene. So we have your Done. You get another bar button item. Then this one you put as a cancel. So this will be an action. Okay. So to connect this, I will go back into the storyboard. We go back to the new guest registration. There will be a method down here. This cancel button tapped. And I will drag that to the cancel button. Right. And let's see if this works. Run. So I got no registrations right now. Plus button. So leave the dates alone. 1 adult. Room type is a penthouse suite. Why not? And I click on done. And it's there. Of course, I can't click on this and display the details. I haven't done that yet. So if I just click plus and I click cancel, and that's done as well. So the challenge is to update the registration table view controller with segue that allows the user to select and view the details of a registration in the add registration table view controller scene. This is something that you've done before. Update that registration table view control to disable and enable the done button based on having all the required information. Okay, if self-registration is nil, then you can disable the button. Add a new section to the table view to display a summary of changes that updates dynamically as the staff enters information. So that is the challenge. Anyway, you can get the full solution inside the teachers folder. So I hope this will be helpful when you're trying to do this exercise on your own. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.